Good evening, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Fort Wayne Community Schools Board of Trustees. We begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And roll call of members.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Good evening, Glenna Yale, 2nd District.
Tom Smith, 3rd District.
Maria Norman, Member at Large.
Ann Duff, Member at Large.
And I am Julie Hollingsworth, elected from District 1. And to my far left is Janet Doherty, the clerk of the board. Good evening. And our superintendent, Dr. Wendy Robinson.
Good evening.
Good evening. So this is an exciting time of year. Most of us went to graduations last week. Dr. Robinson, I believe you went to 5.
It was a pleasure.
Phew! So I think we have a video of highlights from the 5 graduations. Cool. One thing I noticed, I don't know if the rest of you noticed it too, but bow ties are definitely back. I can't tell you how many bow ties I saw. So we also at this time of year have, for the last 2 or 3 meetings, maybe 3 or 4, have had several awards and recognitions. So at this time, we are going to recognize the Northrop, Snyder, Southside, and Wayne students who placed in the top 10 at the Indiana High School Athletic Association Track and Field State Finals. The IHSAA Track and Field State Finals were held May 31st and June 1st in Bloomington. Fort Wayne Community Schools had top 10 finishers from Northrop, Snyder, Southside, and Wayne. Jesse Hamlin took the state championship in the 3,200 meter race. Southside High School's 1,600 meter relay also took the state championship. Northrop girls team finished 6th overall in the state. So, please come forward as your name is read so that we may congratulate you. I didn't see a pronunciation guideline, so I will do my best. So, Markayla Barnes from Northrop, 5th in the discus and 9th in the shot put. Tiona Brown, 2nd in the 100, 7th in the 200, and 8th in the 400 meter relay.
Wow.
Busy. Jodisi Irby, 8th in the 400 meter relay. Dylan Kirkwood, 5th in the 100 hurdles and 8th in the 300 hurdles. Morgan Patterson, 8th in the 400 meter relay. And Jasia Scott, 8th in the 400 meter relay. And we also, okay, well, we also have Terry Milton, head coach, come on down. Christine Bird, assistant coach. Joseph Birch, assistant. Latrice Bolton, assistant. Alexa Scott, assistant. Bob Shank, athletic director. And Jason Witzigruder, principal.
No, we're hiding behind these people. Never stand in a picture with track stars. Thank you so much. See you next year.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's great. And now from Snyder High School, we have Peyton Gorman, who finished 7th in the 400 meter race. That's a sprint now, isn't it, Peyton? It used to be called a run. I think it's a dash now. Jesse Hamlin, state champion in the 3,200 meter run. And we have Brad Altavote, distance coach for the boys, Derek Brinkley, head coach boys, Tasco Williams, head coach girls, Steve Zimbo, athletic director, and Chad Hissong, principal at Snyder. Peyton, are you a senior yet? No, I'm a junior. God, you've been there forever, haven't you?
She'll be back next year.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, I know you're a senior, right? You're headed to Bulldogs.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And now from Southside High School, we have Prashawn Boyd, first on the state champion 1,600 meter relay and 8th in the 400 meter run. We have Omar Jackson, also state champion 1,600 meter relay.
Wow.
Caden Long, 6th. And Diamond Talton, also state champion. And we have Eddie Nolan, head coach. We have several assistants. I'll read all these names. So Taylor Buzzard, Ron Fetcher, Tiffany Fields, Larry Foster, E.J. Greider, Dave Ivy, Dolores Johnson, Stacia Murray, Athletic Director Tori Curry, and Southside Principal Adam Swinford.
Kind of scrunch this way, can you get them all?
A couple rows, maybe.
Yeah, we have to have a couple more. All right, you can get right there. No, that's all right. I don't want to stand next to slender people.
Good job.
Where are you going this year? Okay, we'll hear about you there. Football too?
Him, I ran in the Midwest League Champions.
Okay. So football and track? Okay.
Nice.
All right. We'll see the rest of you next year.
And from Wayne High School, we have Ronald Elliott, who finished sixth in 110 hurdles. That's 100-meter hurdles now, isn't it, Ronald? Okay. And we have Erica Zyrath, who finished 9th in long jump and 10th in high jump. Tommy Hogan, head coach. Several assistants, Mark Kamek, Robert Pashal, Jake Sharon, Dom White, Gary Raber, athletic director, and Wayne principal, John Hauser. And new tech principal, Emily Oberlin.
You want to stand next to me? All right, all right. See you? Junior. All right, good. We'll see you next year. Okay, we'll see you next year.
Okay, next we want to recognize winners from the 2019 Congressional Art Competition. It's recommended that the board recognize Northrop High School students for placing in the top 3 at the 2019 Congressional Art Competition. Each spring, the Congressional Institute sponsors a nationwide high school visual art competition to recognize and encourage artistic talent in the nation and in each congressional district. Students submit entries to the representative's office. This year's theme for the 3rd district was patriotism, and artwork was judged based on technique, suitability to represent our district, and presentation. Judging was done by Congressman Jim Banks' Congressional Art Committee. Winners are recognized both in their district and at an annual awards ceremony in Washington, D.C. The winning works are displayed for 1 year at the U.S. Capitol. So, from Northrop, we have first place finisher Kylie Roberson. Nope, is he? Second place finisher Mackenzie Bennett. Nope. Third place finisher Colin Harder. Nope. Okay. So we have instructor John Platt.
Oh, yay!
Okay.
Well,
Seniors.
Jason Witzgruder, Northrop Principal, if Jason is here.
Yes. Well, here, I'll
So if you can track them down,
They're seniors.
you can give them, yes, exactly, you can give them.
Good recognize.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate that. I'm proud of them.
John, before you go, could I ask one question?
Yeah.
Where exactly is this art on view? Do you know which building? Is it in the Capitol building itself?
What I was told.
Can you go up to the microphone, please? I'm sorry.
From what I was told, it's in the basement corridor between the Capitol building and the,
One
I
of
don't
the-
know.
One of the congressional office
Yeah, one of the
buildings?
congressional offices.
Okay.
But it's there with all the other artworks from around the country.
Okay,
And then the other two are in Congressman Jim Banks' office.
okay,
Oh,
So
okay.
those will be hanging there for a year.
Can go look.
okay.
Nice.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you. We'll go find it.
Yeah, we've seen them there hanging before.
And if anyone is here for students that we recognize and you want to leave, we don't feel bad about that. So that is the end of awards and recognitions, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So, next we have our consent agenda. And these are items that come to us every meeting. They include the minutes from our last meeting, May 20th, vouchers and payroll, vouchers for the period ending June 10th, payroll for the periods ending May 10th and May 24th, and the personnel report. And of course, members have seen all of these items. So do we have a?
Could I, Madam President, could I pull out the personnel report?
Absolutely. We will pull out the personnel report and take that separately.
Okay.
So do we have a motion and a second for the other two items in the consent?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Maria. All those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so those are approved. Now we have the personnel report. Do we have a motion and a second to approve those?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Glenna, and thanks, Maria. So, any comments?
Well, I just wanted an update or to ask the question. I know that when we began the school year, we were some 50 teachers short. I was wondering how we ended up by the end of the year. Did we make some progress on whittling that down? And then are they anticipating an additional shortage this upcoming year that needs to be worked on this summer? Just an update is all I'm looking for.
And I'll just give you generic, and then we'll get very specific. We have redoubled our efforts with our recruiter, Cody. We are still battling with everybody else for special ed teachers and math teachers. And not necessarily having issues with elementary, middle, and other areas in high school, but we're still struggling, in particular with special ed and math and science. We have an agreement with the Teachers Association. We've been trying to give bonuses, and so we've made some headway, but let me just give you numbers and kind of an update on that. The other thing we have also done is we maintained, if you remember last year, we over-allocated for math and language arts at the secondary schools. We maintain that for this year, so I'll try to make sure in the list we show you where we've over-allocated in schools for schedules.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Interesting that I just read an article today that said that in Oklahoma, where they had I think, didn't Oklahoma have a teacher strike?
Did.
Last year, and so the legislature passed legislation that raised teacher salaries, that lo and behold, they're making great strides toward their solving their teacher shortage because they raised teacher pay. What a concept. Okay, so all those in favor of approving the personnel report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and Dr. Robinson, was there anything from the personnel report you wanted to highlight?
Not at this time, but on the next one, we are making progress in hiring, filling some of our assistant principal positions. Those people will be on the board next time.
Okay, great. Okay, so, no old business, so that brings us to new business, and we're going to take the last item first. And so this is designation of a board permanent special counsel. For several years, we were lucky to have Tim McCauley as our special counsel to the board, and he passed away in 2016, and so we have some big shoes to fill, but we think we've found somebody to do that. So it is recommended that the board appoint and designate Bruce O. Boxberger as permanent special counsel to the board with the scope of services and compensation as outlined in the limited engagement letter dated June 10th, 2019. And board members have that letter in front of them. It's further recommended that the board ratify and approve all prior assignments and services performed by Mr. Boxberger as a special counsel to the board. And he has actually served as counsel to the board since October 2017 without any special designation. So, do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Thanks, Ann.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Okay, questions?
Yes.
Comments?
I know Mr. Boxberger, great guy, but I have a couple questions. What was the process for selecting him? I know I was not involved one iota as a board member in talking about Mr. Boxberger or any other possible candidates. How did this come about? I just want to know the process for now.
When the board first needed representation after Mr. McCauley passed away, I spoke to, I think at that time, the officers, looking for someone because we were doing some work on the superintendent's contract. So at that time, I got a recommendation, and we used Mr. Boxberger to do that work. So, we're going to have a busy year next year, and and I did speak with each of you individually, correct?
Very, very briefly, I got a few
Right.
sketchy little details, but not enough to satisfy me.
Okay.
If I had been asked, if Mr. Boxberger was fine, I would have said yes. But I would have also suggested a couple other names, I think,
Right.
of people who are very qualified and who are attorneys. And I think they should at least be invited to submit an application or want the position should they want to. And those two people are, and I don't mind mentioning their names, and they're both past board members of this group. That's Mark Giaquinta and John Olinger. They're both attorneys. They both have great long-term familiarity with the process and particularly with the superintendent process. So I quite frankly would like to see those two individuals invited to interview, if that's the right word, for that position. This has nothing to do with you, Bruce, whatsoever. But I do know that these two people are also attorneys and highly qualified. And I would like to see them given a chance to see if they want to interview or just decline the whole thing before we make any final vote. And I would be willing to say that if that's acceptable to the board, I would like to hold a vote until our next meeting, which I think is in July, or whenever the next meeting is.
Well,
But anyway, I
We
think
have-
there are a couple other people who I would like to see involved in the process to be a more open and transparent process. Because I know I really wasn't involved one iota.
but you did have an opportunity to suggest other people.
I didn't know.
Because
I
you
wasn't
did.
asked, and I didn't even think about that.
But you,
No.
well, I'm not going to get into it.
Julie, I
But
was
there
never
is
asked.
no, I will just say that there is no process outlined in our board policies for actual selection of a board attorney.
And that's-
And in fact, when it was done before, I didn't have any input as a board member either, when our previous board attorney was
Well, I
selected.
think that's a mistake, quite frankly.
Well,
I
that's something
did-
that the policy committee can address. But right now, we have a motion, this item is on the agenda, and so
I would like to
you're going
make
to
a
have to.
motion to delay the vote until our July meeting or the next meeting, so we can have a chance to interview these two highly qualified people. They may not make the cut. It may be Mr. Boxberger, and I have no problem voting for Mr. Boxberger, but I think the process was far too narrow, and it wasn't inclusive, it wasn't open, it wasn't transparent, and I know there are other good quality candidates out there, like the two I mentioned, and I would like to see this vote held until our next meeting, so you, Madam President, could ask those two people if they're interested, and if they are, then give them a chance to be interviewed. That's my request.
Steve?
I hear what Tom's saying. I guess I see somewhat of an urgency here on moving forward on the recommendation on the floor, given the fact that we've got a couple of meetings in the next week. It may be that there will be other opportunities to secure legal counsel, be it Mr. Giaquina or Mr. Olinger, given their past association with the board. But I'm comfortable with moving forward on the recommendation before us.
Anyone else want to?
I agree with
Listen.
Steve. I'd like to move forward with the recommendation.
Well, I'm going to move forward with this item on the agenda. Okay?
The only thing
You're
I-
the president.
Yeah. The only thing I would like to say is, if what Tom said is true, I would hope going forward that our board would include all members in a decision like this that affects all of us, because he's representing the board. It's not just the officers.
I agree.
And so.
But, go ahead.
And so that, I'm just saying that I would hope that would be the way we would approach it, especially on matters like this that definitely affect each of us as a board. But I understand Steve's position also, which is part of the reason we're bringing it up tonight, is because we have business that requires counsel to be present and giving us the advice that we need in order to proceed with a timeline that's in place for board work that's coming, important board work that's coming up.
And that's fine, and I understand that. But let me also make clear that, first of all, I'm following the same procedure that I learned from past President Mark Giaquina. And there is nothing in our policy that requires us to do otherwise. And, you know, Tom, you've known for a month that this was coming. I talked to you over at least a month ago, and you voiced absolutely no objection to it then, so I'm kind of
I didn't
surprised.
think about it then, to be blunt.
Well, okay.
And I didn't think about other possibilities until I knew there were other people who, quite frankly, the two people I mentioned, could hit the ground running instantaneously. But anyway, you're moving ahead, and
Okay.
let's do that.
Okay, and this may be something that the policy committee addresses going forward. Okay, so all those in favor of approving this designation signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
I abstain.
Okay, so. Mr. Boxberger, would you like to stand and, so that everybody can put a name with the, face with the name? Sure, sure.
Thank you. Look forward to serving the board as the board determines in the future. I have experience, probably more than anybody in town, in municipal law. I've worked with school boards before. School corporation is a municipal corporation. I've represented the city of Fort Wayne. I was the city attorney, as Tim McCauley was. In fact, Tim replaced me under Mayor Helmke. And I was city attorney prior to that time and learned my municipal law just like Tim did there. So I look forward to working with the board. I've been a member of this bar for over 40 years. I've always lived in this town. My family is from Fort Wayne. And so I'm very familiar with the importance of Fort Wayne Community Schools in this community and what it does. And I look forward to, and it's an honor. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for excusing me. As I indicated, my grandson's ball game is still on, so I'm going to go do that. This will be the last time I ask for that pleasure. So,
Okay.
see you Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boxberger. And by the way, just in case anybody is wondering, Mr. Boxberger serves as attorney solely for the board. He doesn't represent the district. He just, since the board is the governing body of the district, he is our attorney. Okay, that brings us to case managers. It's recommended that the board approve the contract to provide case managers in our elementary programs for students with emotional disabilities for $180,000. Since the inception of our elementary emotional disabilities programs in the 2011-12 school year, we have been able to consistently increase the number of ED, emotional disability students, remaining in their assigned schools. The review of the 2018-19 data shows that 98% of the students remained in their assigned buildings. The contract with Park Center provides each of our ED elementary programs a case manager during the school day to support Fort Wayne Community School staff with students' behavioral needs. The program's funding is being supported by Medicaid and Federal Grant 611 Part B and will be overseen by Dr. Nikki Sprunger, Director of Special Education. This program supports District Goal 1, achieve and maintain academic excellence. And questions will be answered by Angela Newberry, manager. Do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Glenna. Thanks, Steve. Hello, Angela.
Hello.
So any questions?
I do. There's several times in our information, it was mentioned that we had a very high percentage, almost 100% of students remaining in their assigned buildings. Can you help me understand why that's an important statistic?
So alternatives for students, whether or not they are in their neighborhood school or they access the emotional disabilities program in one of their assigned schools. If they have behavioral needs that cannot be met in their assigned school, what programs with the emotional disabilities are housed in those 5 different elementaries, then there are other potentials of alternative programs or homebound instruction for students, which would not be their least restrictive environment. We want to keep them in our buildings.
When you say other locations, are you talking about buildings outside of the district?
Could be. We currently do not have any at that point in time that are outside of our district, but if they are not able to be accessing their education in one of those emotional disability programs in our 5 elementary schools, then we would have to look at other options. But 98% of our students that are accessing those programs are staying in those programs, in those buildings.
Is that also a reflection of the certification or training that our staff has to deal with these situations?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a collaborative effort with the administrators in those buildings, the emotional disability teachers, the paraprofessionals, and the Park Center case managers. So that collaboration of that team in those buildings is what makes this successful.
Okay. Thank you.
Does the 180,000, is this new case managers, or is this ones we already have, or a combination?
They are, hopefully, Park Center hires those. So they are, that's our contract with them, and they hire them from the outside.
Okay.
I would say majority of them come back and service our students year after year.
Okay, so this is something that we already do, we're not?
Correct.
Got it.
Yes.
Is that going to provide a case manager for each school, or does like one case manager manage several schools?
So we have 5 elementaries that house the emotional disabilities programs.
Right.
South Wayne has 2, a K2 and a 3-5. Studi has 2 classrooms. Price has 3 classrooms, St. Joe Central has 3 classrooms, and Haley has 2 classrooms. So that provides a case manager in each one of those classrooms.
It's not per school, it's per classroom?
Per classroom.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor of approving the contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and you have before you the copy of the contract with some details in it. Okay, that brings us to the Healthy Schools Grant. It's recommended that the board approve the acceptance of a 3-year grant from the Indiana State Department of Health, Division of Nutrition and Physical Activity, Healthy Schools Grant in the amount of $10,000 a year. Funding for years 2 and 3 will be based on the completion of grant activities, monthly reports, and an approved work plan at the end of year 1 and 2 that will be submitted to the Division of Nutrition and Physical Activity. The maximum amount for the grant will be $30,000. The Healthy Schools Grant, in accordance with the new ESSA requirements, will help fund wellness opportunities within the district. Our goal is to support the academic needs of our students by attending to their health and wellness needs. This will be accomplished by helping schools form wellness committees that will assess their individual buildings to see what needs and wants they have and how we can assist them. This competitive grant was written by Gina Dundon, Wellness Coordinator, and supports Fort Wayne Community School Goal 1, Achieve and Maintain Academic Excellence. Question will be answered by Mary Hess, Director of Health and Wellness Services. Do we have a motion and a second?
So move.
Thanks, Tom.
Second.
Thanks, Maria. Hi, Mary?
Actually, I'm Gina Dundon. I'm actually
Oh, you're
the wellness
Gina.
coordinator.
Okay,
Yes.
the wellness coordinator. Okay, so any questions?
What would be an example of wellness opportunities that this grant would fund?
Sure. There are different opportunities that we can do. What we want to do is focus on the individual buildings so the committees could come together and decide what they want. Some of my ideas are stationary bikes in their media centers to where the kids can do a read and ride program. So as they're in media centers, they're getting a little bit of wellness at the same time. I'd like to support some tower gardens in some of our science classrooms, so there's a curriculum that goes with that. They would grow their foods, they would taste their foods, we could use those in certain dishes that we serve within the nutrition services as well. And then there's also the idea of collaborating with St. Joe Foundation to do the Healthy Eating Active Living, which is the HEAL program in a few of our schools so that the kids learn the safety of kitchen, and then they can also learn how to use those fresh fruits and vegetables and how they taste and those kind of situations as well.
Sounds nice.
Yeah. Any other questions? Is this a grant that we currently get?
This is a brand-new grant that was
Oh,
just
okay.
written.
Okay, great. And so if we meet our metrics, that first year, then you get an additional 2 years.
I'd get an additional
Correct.
10 grand for the next year, and then we'd meet again, and we get another additional 10.
Okay, great. Anything else? Okay, thank you. All those in favor of approving the grant signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to a temporary interfund loan. It's recommended that the board approve all interfund loans necessary to eliminate deficits in certain funds of the corporation as of June 30th, 2019. Cash deficits in funds of the corporation are not allowed at the end of the fiscal year. Deficits in property tax supported funds could occur if the distribution of property taxes from Allen County is short of expectations. Normal timing differences between revenue and expenditures could cause a temporary deficit. State statute allows temporary transfers between funds if certain requirements are met. The treasurer must make all necessary transfers and report the loans to the board. Questions will be addressed by Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend. So do we have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Steve. So, questions? So Kathy, there's no additional information, so do we anticipate making any transfers, or is this just something we do at this time of year just in case?
We do it just in case.
Okay.
It's a possibility that, because, it's only one fund that I can think of that could be tight, now would be the pension bond fund, but the other ones, we shouldn't have any issues. So I'll let you know after June 30th how it turns out.
Well, and now with the operations fund,
Yeah.
so there's really only
It'd be less likely. It'd be the
3 or
debt funds.
4. Yeah, the debt fund,
The debt fund.
operations fund,
Yeah.
and pension bond, and
Yeah. And the
does
referendum.
that include the referendums?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's unlikely, but this way we have permission to do it if we need to
So
do
this
it.
just covers our bases?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now this brings us to the Electric Works intent to lease. It's recommended that the board approve an intent to lease approximately 26,000 square feet of renovated classroom space at Electric Works. The district is interested to begin a new school at the Electric Works site that would include half-day STEAM, that's science, technology, engineering, art, and math, opportunities for interested Fort Wayne Community School juniors and seniors. The expected enrollment is 150 students in the morning and 150 students in the afternoon. Admission would be through the annual lottery process. Terms of the lease will be negotiated and brought to the board for approval by August 2019. It is expected that the school would open in August of 2021. Questions will be addressed by Chief Financial Officer Kathy Friend and Chief of Student, Family, and Community Engagement, D. Fay Williams Robbins. So we have a motion and a second.
Oh, so moved.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Steve. So didn't we do something similar to this before, or did it not go to the board? I thought we already
talked
did
about
an
this
intent to lease.
For about almost 2 years.
Yeah.
We've had a work session on it. This is obviously Electric Works trying to make sure that they have people leasing space. So there's been lots of information on it. But this is really reaffirming the commitment and the work session we've had with you, and now just formalizing it. We
Right.
never brought it to the board until they got a little further down the road, because our being there depends on who else is there.
Right.
So this is just.
So this does not
conversation
commit us to anything.
No.
This is just a public announcement of our intent to lease space if the project goes forward.
And it's
Correct.
important for us because we're the K-12 aspect. Most of the conversations are around businesses and higher ed. We're actively involved in those conversations too. but it's just our publicly saying out loud what we've talked about for about a year and a half of the intent. And we really haven't varied much from some of the things we've talked about, but obviously it makes sense that some of what we'll do is dependent on what it ends up there, because it is the connection between the companies and the universities and us. So,
Do we have an idea what price we'll be leasing the square feet, the 26,000 square feet? Do you have a ballpark figure in mind, and how much in renovations do you anticipate? I know we're not committing to signing a lease right now until you bring us an official lease, but have you guys, I'm sure you've been kicking around some ideas.
Yeah, we have some estimates, but they have to be finalized because included in those estimates are furniture and computers and renovations, and we want to make sure that we're both on the same page in terms of what's included in that lease payment. So we're getting close. We have a lot of details to work through, but it's going to help us to have the financing of those improvements in the lease so that we don't have to, bring funds forward immediately for the project.
and so the operational part is really what the lease is about. The educational part is depending upon the tuition and the number of students we have there, similar to what we do with Anthony's Career Center. So you saw it's about 150 kids in the morning, 150 in the afternoon. So obviously we kind of have some figures about how many teachers that would be. But I think what's been really good, I think, is everybody kind of understands we're not one of the anchor tenants. We're a public school system. And so what they're trying to do is to get us a lease agreement that won't cause us to have to put so much up front at the beginning. But the educational part, it fits what we have to do anyway to staff teachers.
And then how long is the lease that you guys are looking at? Are you looking at a long-term lease, like 10 years,
Yes.
30 years? How many
10
years?
years.
Okay, a 10-year lease? And then are they going to do the renovations for us? Or are
Yes.
we in charge of our
They-
own renovations?
No, they have a contractor that will do the renovations, but Darren obviously will be heavily involved in, at the work that they're doing. So but they will do all of the negotiating with the contractor, and it'll be their space that we're living in.
And Faye has been.
Okay, so they're
involved.
going to do the build-out to
Yep.
suit our needs?
Yes.
And it'll be
Yes.
there, and then that will be built into the lease as well?
Right, that's right.
Okay.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Glenn, but Faye's been involved from the programmatic standpoint, even though we're not doing the renovations. From day one, she's been involved in what kind of things, because what we're trying to do there is not to repeat things we already do. And we're obviously also not trying to take away from what happens now currently with the Anthony's Career Center. So it's really Kathy, the financial part, Faye, the programmatic, and it is kind of hinged on what companies end up being there.
Sure.
But one thing I also want to talk about, and Faith could probably elaborate, she's been and has started a consortium with higher ed universities from the beginning. So a lot of the kinds of programming that we're thinking about is connecting from those conversations, and also some state agencies. So, if you have some questions very specifically about the kind of things we're thinking about, Kathy's doing the money and Faye's working on that program.
I think probably before the board would take any action in August, we'll probably have a work session.
We will.
Correct?
Right.
So we'll have, right, so we'll know.
What direction we're going?
Exactly.
what
We'll-
we're
More
obligated.
specifics of the program and more specifics of the financing and lease and, how that's all
Sure,
going to work.
sure. As long as
Okay.
this is non-binding, I don't have a problem with
Right.
moving forward.
Yes, this is
That's-
not, exactly. This does not commit us to anything.
That sounds like a great idea. Can we get that on the books or begin to look for a date so that we're all available? I mean, summer's awfully busy for all of us. So to follow up on Glenna's line of questions regarding money, didn't we see some numbers about a year ago that gave us a ballpark figure, what those might be? So hopefully we can see some updated numbers. And then I thought I saw something, Dr. Robinson, about several administrators taking a field trip to try to get a sense of what another STEAM classroom or concept of a school look like somewhere east?
Bay.
New York.
And where did you go?
We actually went to the Navy Yard in Brooklyn about a week or so ago and had an opportunity to see not only the industries and businesses and things that are part of that Navy Yard, but also the school, and spend some time with the students, spend some time with the staff, the folks who were part of the developers that have helped to bring those two entities together. And so has given us a good idea of what that can look like for us as we think about how to craft this around the programmatic pieces as well as how we get students into that program.
What did that facility, why did you go to that facility? What did attracted you to it?
It is most closely aligned to the kind of vision that we have. It's not a full-day program. It's not one where you take the students and they are there all day long. It is one that is a half-day, and they have about the same number of students, 150 in the morning, 150 in the afternoon. They draw from neighboring schools, which was our initial thought, but as we're thinking through this, we're trying to nail that down. But it was most similar to the program that we want to put together.
It's a STEAM school.
Yes.
Has nothing to do with building ships.
No, not at all. As we think about, and you have to really think about the content of the courses that students would take, it's pretty regional. And so as we think about what our students would take, our programs might look different, but the structure would be very similar to what they have.
With respect to some of the other programs, magnet programs we have, the intent is not to attract the best and the brightest.
Every time we do something, we want to increase every child's ability to be best and bright. But what we want to try to do is to try to match the kids with the programming. Because one of the things that we talk a lot about is college and career. And I don't know how many of you saw, about 2 weeks ago, we had a signing over at FACE with 48 students who signed directly from high school to go work at companies. They have been sponsored by those companies and are really going to graduate going into some really high-paying careers. And so what we're trying to do with the whole idea of the STEAM school is the community wants kids who can do research. They want kids who can work in all of the industries, orthopedics and all the different types of industries. So we want to pique the interest of students to start early enough so that they can actually try it out. Because we know of a lot of kids, they go to college or go into school to study for something that really they have no interest in. But you're accurate. We want to make sure that the range of kids, it's not, we don't hand select who gets to have the opportunity. But we also want to make sure that if they get there, they can be successful. And some of the things we're going to talk about a little bit later are those 6 C's, the global competencies. Because if you talk to employers and university folks, there's some of those skills that kids have to have, collaboration, creativity. That has to also be a part of what we do there.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the intent to lease Electric Works, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us to the close. Oh, sorry about that. So we have, if you recall, at the beginning of our meeting, we recognized Northrop High School students for placing in the top 3 at the 2019 Congressional Art Competition. So our first placed winner has arrived.
All right.
From Northrop High School, Kylie Roberson. Come on down. And John Platt, instructor. At first, Kylie, I thought you were holding your artwork. But that's probably hanging at the Capitol by now, isn't it?
There you go. She said your art was in the Capitol by now. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Kylie, are you a senior at Northrop? I'm just graduating. Oh, okay. There's a microphone back there. If you want to just let us know what your future plans are. Do they involve art?
Yes, I plan to go to Purdue, and I plan to start this fall and major in some type of art and design.
Great. So what was your medium, or your artistic medium for your first place?
For the painting, it was acrylic paint.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
So if we go to the Capitol, we can see it, or is it in Mr. Banks' office?
It'll be in the Capitol building.
Okay.
And we're going to go there in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks to see it?
Send us pictures.
Yes, exactly. Post them online.
I will.
Well, congratulations,
Yes.
and good luck to you next year at Purdue.
Thank you.
If I could, to Julie, we had Mr. Lesh here with a group of students, but we did not have written materials. And Mr. Lesh and that group of students, their work is entirely too important for us to wing it. So I wanted to apologize, but I didn't have enough time to try to give you words. And so we're going to invite them back for the next board meeting because we didn't have enough material to make that, give it the dignity that it deserves. So I apologize to anyone who did come, but we did not have that on the agenda. And you know how detailed that information is. So they'll be back at our next board meeting.
Okay, great. And Kylie and family, I know you're busy, so if you want to leave, you don't want to listen to the board comments, I don't, you won't hurt our feelings. So, Steve?
Couple of comments. I'm sorry I didn't ask it when the folks were before us, but with respect to the Park Center case managers, the agreement says that we're going to pay $15,000 for a full-time case manager, and I'm sure they get paid more than 15 grand. So is part of that cost also then, does it also then come from Medicaid reimbursement and other sources of funding to pay for those positions? And because we're only paying $180,000 for 12 case managers, and I'm wondering if we have confidence in our new Medicaid reimbursement provider, Excelify, which I understand does a really good job in identifying what services are reimbursable. I'm just hearing that they've got a pretty good track record around the country. So don't need an answer tonight, but if somebody could provide me the information. I'm sure those case managers are getting, what, 40, 45,000 plus benefits. So, I mean, this is a great deal for us. It really is, to see that come out of our general budget. A couple of comments about graduation. I had a chance to attend both the South and the Wayne graduations. Graduations were in the arena at the Coliseum rather than the exhibit hall or room or whatever they call it. I would hope that we might consider going back to the other room next year. This one is much noisier. And I know we asked, but the parents did not curb their enthusiasm. I know it's a momentous event, but it was noisy. And I know that the other room kind of dissipates that sound.
Softens the sound a little bit.
Much better. Our students were well behaved. I mean, the seniors have been through several ceremonies at their home high school, and I just found their behavior exceptional. I guess I didn't recognize or see them last year, but I really liked the banners that sit behind the stage, at the back of the stage, representing all of the schools in that high school's district. I thought those were really classy. And I found very becoming the one student from Southside High School who was in his military dress uniform. It was a white military dress uniform, and I just thought, what a great example for other students and parents to see that representation, and the fact that our school district doesn't get into a big hullabaloo about making all of our kids wear a gown, particularly those that have already decided to enter the military. So, we just, we stay calm and take pride in all of our students. And if one student or two who has joined the military has a great uniform to wear, we probably allow them to display that. So they were good ceremonies, and I was pleased to be there.
I just want to offer best wishes to all the graduates. I'm sure they're excited to be done with high school and looking forward to the future plans that that they have. And I just want to say that the graduation I went to, which was at Snyder's, was amazing. These guys have it down to a science. I would never have believed we got out of there with so many graduates, and it was dignified, and the speakers were phenomenal. It was just a real delight and pleasure to be there, and you guys did an amazing job that day. Congratulations.
Yeah, I too want to wish all the graduates the best in the future. Guys did a great job.
I have no comment.
Maria? Dan?
One of the pre-graduation events that I attended, I'd heard it happening, and I think Southside's done it for several years, the parade around the school outside in their cap and gown. And I was at Snyder's this year, and it's so much different when you see it in person. It was just really amazing. And Snyder has the perfect campus for it, too, because they have an elementary and a middle school right across the street. And so they went to the elementary and the middle school and marched around. And I'm sure that means a lot to those kids, something that they can look forward to. So if any other high schools don't do that, that's something they should try, because it just was really special.
Dr. Robinson?
No comment.
Okay. This is, there's so much going on at the end of the school year. Besides graduation, some of us went to Construction Trades, builds a house every year. And so they had an open house last week on the last day of school. And so I think, Ann and Maria, I know you were there. So it was really, first of all, just to see the quality of the construction. The kids made, the students made their own cement countertops for the kitchen and the bathrooms, which I thought was really cool. And they do it all. They do the foundation, all the way up to the roofing. I think the only thing they contract out is the flooring, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And was there anything else?
He said that they ran out of time and they'd contracted the
Landscape.
backsplash in the kitchen.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, but other than that, man, they and they didn't have time to get the landscaping done, any landscaping done this time, yeah, so. Wow, does our Construction Trades, those students really do good work. I also, at the end of May, went to our continuing education English language learner ceremony, or English literacy certificate ceremony. So these are adults who are beginning the process of learning the English language, and there's beginner 1, beginner 2, intermediate, and then advanced certificates. And as soon as they earn their advanced certificate, then they can go on to the continuing education high school equivalency program to earn either an Indiana high school diploma or the high school equivalency program. And I think there were 28 different countries represented there, and that was really a cool ceremony. And of course, I went to Northrop's graduation, and like everyone else said it so well done. And, you know, it's also just neat to see just the joy and that the students have for earning their high school diploma. I mean, there were a couple students I know who, when I shook their hands, they were really emotional about it. It was really, and it was, the whole thing is just moving. There's a lot of journeys there to celebrate. And I did want to mention one, I don't know if you saw the article in the Journal Gazette, but there's a voucher school in Fort Wayne called Horizon that has done so poorly that they are now, because not only is their enrollment dropping, but they have had 3 consecutive years of a DRF, so now they're not allowed to accept any new voucher students. So what happens, Indiana? Well, in Indiana, the leader goes somewhere else and starts a new school. Because now in Indiana, you can get immediately accredited, if they do so, from the State Board of Education, and they can start accepting new voucher students. That just occurs to me that that's not a good way to run a school system. That kind of sounds more like what happens when people open, I don't know, pill clinics or something, and they get shut down by the authorities in one place, and then they pop up and open somewhere else. Just doesn't seem like a state education system should run that way.
There's a movie coming out that aptly describes that. It's called The Dead Don't Die. And I've always characterized the school you've just mentioned as a vampire school,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter how poorly they perform, you can't kill them off. And we should not be allowed to provide educational malpractice using taxpayer dollars. You know, I don't think we're ever going to see the end of vouchers in charter schools, but we surely should put an end to schools that don't perform. I don't care what color they are. They just should not be allowed to keep getting taxpayer dollars.
I agree. It used to be, until a couple years ago, that a school, before they could get vouchers, would have to establish themselves for a year.
Yeah.
And then they would go to the State Board of Education or the Indiana Department of Education and get permission to receive vouchers. But they changed the law a couple years ago. Now they can just, you know, let's find a strip mall and open a, you know, buy some books from Walmart and open a school. So, yeah, so now The Dead Don't Die. Is that about vampires or pill mills or schools?
Maybe a combination of all of them.
Okay. I just wanted your movie review. Okay. We have nothing else on our meeting agenda, so as soon as we adjourn, we'll open the microphone for anyone who wishes to address the board, but do we have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Maria. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the microphone is open for